It's Anthony from Black Dolly Media. It's 2021 and the calendar date marks July the 1st. Now, on any other given July the 1st around this neck of the woods, people would be rejoicing in the celebration for their national pride today. But this is certainly far from the case. In the lead up to this unpatriotic date, the unforgivable tragedy of the discovery of the human remains of 215 Indigenous children in British Columbia at a residential school started a painful investigation to sadly start digging. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission estimates between 4,100 and 6,000 First Nation children were abused and neglected while under the care of the residential schools died. Around the late 1800s, they estimated over 150,000 First Nation, Inuit, and Métis innocent children were torn from their families against their will and dragged physically to these residential schools, with 1 in every 50 never making it back home to their loving family from the arms that they were torn from. Now, for those of you that are unaware of the history, you probably may be asking yourself why. Well, apparently the goal was to eliminate Indigenous language and culture and to introduce Christianity and English. But in the disgusting process of gross inhumane justice, the process in this history is tainted with murder, child abduction, ethnic cleansing, child molestation, rape, and murder, with the blood on the hands of the Catholic Church and the Canadian government. As it stands, the more we keep digging, unfortunately, the more children remains are coming to the surface, and Canada mourns today. Over 1,500 unmarked graves, and the numbers are still rising, unfortunately. I came down here today for the Every Child Matters in the City of Toronto to walk beside and honor and support the students of residential schools and the thousands of children who perished along with their community and their people. Now, I arrived on location about a half an hour just before 10:30. There was under 100 people there. The people from the Toronto Council Fire and Native Cultural Centre were selling T-shirts towards the cause, which I gladly purchased. Around 20 minutes after 10, that's when everything started to really take a turn. There was people showing up in droves, and before we knew it, there were thousands there that morning, with people from all different races and backgrounds from across Toronto and the country. I'm outside the Toronto Fire and Native Council Centre here with a gentleman. What's your name?
My name is Daniel.
Daniel,
nice to meet you.
You too. You want to tell us a little bit about why you're here today?
Yeah, well, I've been working with Indigenous nations in Central America and First Nations here in Canada for the past couple of years. And we knew the atrocities that goes on, not just in Canada, but across the continents of the Americas, whether it be North America, Central or South America. And it's extremely important for us to show our solidarity with, the continuation of an ethnocide that's going on, whether it be in Canada and again around the world. And it's important to be in solidarity with the First Nations communities, First Nations peoples, especially because, to this day, these communities face unprecedented discrimination issues of even we're looking at like the missing and murdered Indigenous girls and women. These are all issues that kind of motivate me to be here today, just alongside everybody else as a community, as a people.
I support, and for anybody that's interested in joining any more of these marches, would you encourage them to come down and take part and get active?
Absolutely. We have to acknowledge that we are on stolen land, that we are on occupied land, that this land belonged to a people, belonged to a culture, a nation that was here before us. And especially important for the immigrant community that come into Canada to realize that, when they're coming into Canada, it's not just, they're coming into a system and they have to, they can, yes, it is, they have all these privileges, but you have to also know that these privileges are built upon the destruction and the ethnocide of entire nations in Canada. So here in Ontario, we have the Mohawk, we have the Ojibwe, other First Nations people that it's extremely important for us to get to know them, learn their history, and even connect with them in order to be able to understand the suffering that they went through in order for us to be here.
By this point, the crowd was as far as the eye could see, and then the golf carts came out. Passengers on this convoy were all survivors from the Canadian residential school system and the elders. It was time to kick off the Every Child Matters March with our first stop destination, Yonge and Dundas Square. Although the nature of the cause being the loss of thousands of First Nations residential school children, I personally felt an overwhelming feeling of unity, strength, dignity, and an overwhelming camaraderie between Torontonians and First Nation groups from across the country and from the sidewalk onlookers in support as we arrived at the first destination, Yonge and Dundas Square, where I was at the heart of the drum and dance circle, all as one in the nerve center in the biggest city in the country, thousands strong. Now, after the entire country, and the world for that matter, was watching us leave Dundas Square thousands strong, our next destination was off to the Spirit Garden of Nathan Phillips Square, and the crowds kept growing. And then we finally made it to our final destination, to the Spirit Garden, where the Canadian flag was held at half-mast outside Old City Hall in Nathan Phillips Square to assemble and listen to the speakers, and I also had the honor to speak with some key speakers and other special guests.
Our children are beautiful. Our families are beautiful. We're all beautiful people. And we've been endowed with a gift. A very special gift that in our languages we call a number of things, but in English we call it love. And that's the gift that we have, and that's the gift we have to learn better. Look at our dog, he's even sharing with us this morning. So this morning to get us going, I'm going to call upon...
When I became mayor, I thought it was important that I should learn more. I was a student of Canadian history at university. Some of you have heard me say this before. And I will say to you that in 4 years of study, much of it in Canadian history, I learned virtually nothing. I'm not faulting the university of the day, the faculty of the day, or anybody else, but I learned virtually nothing about Indigenous people and virtually nothing, for example, about residential schools.
And this is when I had the pleasure of speaking to two gentlemen that had drove many a mile to come down here today. It's Anthony coming to you live from Nathan Phillips Square here for the Every Child Matters. Today I have with us, what's your name, sir?
Greg Big Canoe.
Greg Big Canoe?
Dave Malley.
And what organization are you guys from?
I'm the president of Red Rum MC Snake Island chapter.
I was very pleased to meet you. Thanks for coming down today. I want to ask you guys, what's the importance of today?
Today, the rally is important to show Canadians that we're very emotional and hurt with all the recent discoveries, and we're trying to heal, and by coming here and doing this today, not to show Canada that we're proud to be who we are, and we want the message and to get out there and Canadians to be educated on what really happened in Canadian history.
Were you guys happy with the turnout here today?
I think it was a good turnout. Yes. Yes.
Now, if there's anything you could, would like a strawberry?
Sure, I'll take one. Thank
I'll
you.
take a strawberry as well.
I got her.
Thank you very much. Is there anything you would like to say to the rest of the Toronto today?
Well, I'd like to thank all the organizers of this event and all the people that showed up in support, like our people and all the non-natives that showed up in support of this event today in lieu of Canada Day.
That I come here after being at the Kamloops to Shwapmuk, Kamloops Indian Residential School. I was honored to be asked to go and to record and to see what was happening at the school, to remember the 215. It was a place, it is a place, it's a sacred place, it's a sacred ground, that school. I'm thinking those 215 little spirits that are there at the school, in the fields, and I'm thinking of the other children that have not yet been found today.
Every child matters! Every child matters! Come on! Every child matters! Every child matters!
But I want to say this, truth comes before reconciliation. of children in public schools. I want you to all remember that and think about how privileged you are. I went to public school. And I am so grateful because I might have died. I might not have come home like my cousin Willard. I might not have come home like my cousin Jessie. I might not have come home like my sister Karen. I might not have come home like my brother Nelson. I belong to a family of 25 children. Only 20 of us are left.
It's Anthony from Black Donnelly Media. Wrapping up what's been a very eventful day. I have here with us one of the speakers. What's your name, sir?
My name is Gordon Peters.
Gordon Peters, and what are you representing?
I'm a former board member at Council Fire. They asked me if I'd come in and help facilitate this day, and I agreed to do that.
Now tell me, after today's unfolded, were you happy with the turnout?
Oh, amazing. I couldn't believe there were so many people. There's just a sea of orange coming up Dundas. As far as I could see back, it was all orange.
It was beautiful. It was a good turnout as well. Now, what would you think was your main message you'd like to get out today after wrapping up?
I think our main message that most of our speakers had today is that we have to take more responsibility for what we want to do going forward. You know, we have all these different groups that we deal with. Got to find a way to bring those together. We've got to find a way to be able to have our Indigenous self-determination be part of all that. Poverty, housing, everything, all has to be wrapped up in the same thing, so that when we talk about those things, we know what we're doing. We're talking about recovery of our people in those processes.
And we got a long road ahead of us.
There is a long road, but you know what? I think by the number of people came out today, and I look at the residential school survivors that are here, you know, that are singing songs now, you know, that they're drumming and singing, you know, and wearing regalia, you know, I mean.
Yeah, it was a full.
You know,
it was a great.
15 years ago, we didn't see that at Council Fire, you know.
Yeah.
So that's a moment to really be proud of, because it is a significant change. Sure. Our mind is what we've got to change.
Sure.
You know.
Sure. What if there was a message that you could say out to the rest of the city of Toronto today? What would that be?
Message today in Toronto is that the pandemic is over. Things are never going to be the same again, and Indigenous people have got to play a major role in redesigning their future.
Because every child matters. Every child that's in the foster care system right now, who's disconnected from their community, every child that was taken in the 60s scoop, every child that was taken in the millennial scoop. And we have to acknowledge that there are more children in care now in Canada than there were at the height of the residential school system. So when we say that every child matters, that means that we have to reconcile what that means today. Canada is at a reckoning, and we need to call on every level of government, municipal, provincial, and federal, to start honoring the calls to action in the TRC and standing up and doing what's right. That means that the days of jurisdictional ping pong over which level of government pays for what needs to stop. The days of shunting problems off back and forth between the federal and provincial governments needs to stop.
Hey, brother.
And that starts today with the call to all levels of government to fully fund the search of residential school sites to bring the children home.
And Suze, when she spoke about all levels of government, she's absolutely right. We have to work together to make this right and move forward. Move forward. So my call to action, because every child matters, is what happens tomorrow? What happens after this gathering today? There is strength in numbers. We cannot stop. The momentum has to continue. So the call to action is, be loud, stand up. I want to hear from you. I'm already hearing from you. I want to hear from you. Hold me to account. Hold us all to account. This will be led by you. We are listening. That is what allyship means. Miigwech.
In a perfect world, it would have been great to say I spent the day here today getting to meet the First Nations members from our community in Toronto to rejoice on a national celebration. But this is certainly far from the case. What we're seeing before our very eyes is a pool of blood that is coming to the surface the deeper that we dig. Now, the Canadian government and the Catholic Church and Canadians as a whole have known this for years, and now it's unstoppably rising to that surface. To say this is something that had just happened in the past couldn't be further from the truth. Through the course of my broadcasting career, I worked firsthand with the Woodland Creek First Nation in Peace River up in Alberta. I worked with the Nakota First Nation in Whitecourt and the Dene First Nation in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. Through meeting these different First Nations from these different bands and these communities that I lived and worked in was certainly a pleasure, but there was also a non-pleasurable experience about it. And that unpleasure was to know and feel and understand and see firsthand that racism, segregation, and oppression is still alive and well in this country when it comes to First Nations. Well, you need to understand, if you're living in Canada and you're not First Nation, you're an immigrant, like myself, living in somebody else's land. We need to understand that the tragedy unfolding before our very eyes has to be concluded with the Catholic Church and the Government of Canada being held accountable to the utmost respect for the First Nations and the country that we live in, which is theirs. This may possibly be one of the worst tragedies in this country's history that cannot be swept under any rug any longer. For Black Donnelly Media, to all the souls of the residential schools of the First Nation children and their community, I'm Anthony. This is not Canada Day.
Thank you.